I walked over 10,000 steps over various terrain to find out if my Canon RF 200-800 is a suitable walk-around lens for wildlife photography. So before I tell you about my experience shooting with the lens, I'll tell you a little bit about my fitness level. I try to get about 10,000 steps per day. Now, over the last few months, and whenever I say last few months, I mean the last quite a few months, I have not been getting 10,000 steps per day at all. I've been stuck behind a desk way too much, and I'm ashamed to say there's been quite a few days that I might be pushing 4,000 steps. So I tell you this so that you can compare your fitness level with mine. I was carrying this heavy lens, I was carrying this backpack. 10,000 steps is definitely something that I have not been doing very often recently. I am not a 7 days a week gym guy. I would probably guess that most people who are out photographing birds are not hitting the gym 7 days a week. If you're offended by that, I'm sorry, but you probably agree that that's the case. Now, I purposely did not use my cotton carrier harness. That's probably my favorite accessory that I've purchased in the last few years. It's just fantastic to take the weight off your arms and distribute it very well. And I didn't want to use it for this little experiment here. I wanted to just use all of my energy to hold and carry the lens and my backpack. I went completely handheld. I had a monopod with me, but I didn't use the monopod at all. So everything that you're going to see in this video was shot handheld without any kind of stabilization at all. So what was my experience like? Well, I can tell you that in the first hour, I did not notice the weight of the lens at all. It was a beautiful morning. It was partly cloudy, there was some sun poking through, and it was illuminating the birds really well. I came across quite a few birds really quickly in my walk, and I just had a really great time. The weight of the lens wasn't a factor at all. I was just paying attention to my shot composition and exposure and watching the wildlife. I really didn't notice the weight of the lens until about 8,000 steps or 4 miles into my walk. You have to understand that I was stopping quite a bit, so it's not like it was a straight 4 miles. There was a lot of stops in there, so probably about an hour and a half into my walk. And really, I think the only reason I started to notice the weight of the lens was because there was nothing to photograph. I was literally just walking, hiking through the woods on some paths and trails, and I had nothing else to think about. There was no subjects to photograph, so the weight of the lens started to become more noticeable because I wasn't having as much fun. In a previous video, I mentioned how I have a tendency to, whenever I'm photographing from my truck, to maybe always be zoomed in the whole way. I didn't find that to be the case whenever I was walking around with the lens. I definitely would keep it compressed and as small as possible, and then only be zooming in once I had a subject to photograph. And another thing that I noticed was because of that, I mentioned in a previous video too that, you know, it takes quite a bit to be able to zoom in all the way to 800 millimeters, but that really didn't come into play. I didn't see that as an issue at all whenever I was photographing. What I do see as a major benefit is the fact that you're able from a single position to be at 200 millimeters and then get a nice extreme close-up or close-up of your subject at 800 millimeters without moving your feet at all. So you're able to tell a more complete story without putting any pressure at all on your subject. You don't need to move closer to your subject to get closer with 800 millimeters. Now, obviously you can, but it's a great versatile lens that you're able to tell that complete story from 200 to 800 millimeters without the potential of spooking your subject and losing the ability to get any more photographs. If you're a wildlife photographer who likes to go to parks, walk trails, and see what you can find, and you're just not sure if this lens is a true walk-around lens because of its length, because of its weight, my experience today, I would recommend it to you. It was a lot of fun to use, and as I said, the weight really didn't become a factor for me until there was nothing to shoot. and I was just kind of getting a little bit bored, and my feet were getting tired anyway. At that point, I'd been out for about 3 hours, and it was really time to call it a day anyway. So I really do highly recommend this. For the price point that it's at, you can't beat it. The image quality is just fantastic, and I can't recommend a cotton carrier harness enough. If the weight becomes too much for you, you can slide it into that harness and keep on walking until you find more subjects and your arms get back a little bit of strength. Now, I don't know what I'm going to feel like in the morning. Right now I feel pretty good, but I really don't expect too many problems. It really was a joy to use. If you're still not sure if this lens is for you, I made a video where I talked about my reasoning behind selling my RF 800 and replacing it with the 200 to 800. You can watch that video over here.